Pablo Escobar's childhood wasn't easy. At 11 years old, Pablo Escobar stood over a dead man's body not as a killer, but as a witness. That moment shattered his innocence forever. In the next few seconds, you'll see how one childhood decision, one unforgettable moment, set the foundation for the most feared drug lord in history. Stay with me to the end of this video, because you are in the right channel. You won't regret. This is Pablo Escobar's childhood early life story. Before fame, before money, before power, when he was just a boy trying to matter in a world that told him he never would. Some stories don't just inform you, they stay with you. Subscribe so you never miss the next unforgettable one. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born in 1949 in Rio Negro, Colombia, the third of 7 children in a family that had little, but expected much. His father, Abel de Jesus Escobar, worked the land with his hands, planting crops that barely fed the family. His mother, Hermelda Gaviria, was a school teacher, strict, disciplined, and deeply convinced that education was the only way out. On paper, it sounds normal, almost peaceful. But here's the truth and the tension. Colombia in the 1950s wasn't just poor, it was violent. This was the era of La Violencia, a time when neighbors disappeared overnight, when landowners ruled like kings, and police loyalty could be bought with a handshake and a few bills. Children didn't grow up dreaming. They grew up watching who had power, watching who survived, watching who mattered. His mother later described Pablo as intelligent, stubborn, and difficult to control. But one word stood out above all others: he wanted to be important. Not rich, not famous, important. That hunger to be seen in a world that ignored him became the quiet fire inside Pablo Escobar, and that fire would only grow stronger. Pablo hated losing, hated being ignored, hated being told no. Because of the game, but because losing made him feel small. And Pablo Escobar could not stand feeling small. Friends from his childhood later remembered something unsettling. If Pablo wasn't winning, he didn't try harder. He quit right there, walked away. But the game never really ended for him. At school, Pablo wasn't the strongest kid in the room. He wasn't the richest either, far from it. Other boys had better shoes, better lunches, better chances. Teachers said he was smart, but defiant, quiet when watched, explosive when challenged, and humiliation that stayed with him. One former classmate later said, if Pablo felt disrespected, he wouldn't react immediately. That's what scared us. He always waited. Waited until the teacher left. Waited until you were alone. Waited until you forgot. It's when Pablo learned a lesson that would define his early life. Fear lasts longer than respect. Even as a child, long before fame, power, or violence, Pablo Escobar was learning leverage. And once he understood that, he never stopped using it. Most kids sell lemonade. Pablo Escobar sold tombstones, yes, real ones. This isn't rumor, this is a true story, confirmed by friends who were there. As a teenager, Pablo would sneak into rural cemeteries after sunset. No flashlights, no noise. Just quick hands and faster hearts. He and his friends pried loose old gravestones, some forgotten, some cracked, then hauled them away like stolen treasure. Think about that for a second. A kid standing among the dead, breaking symbols of memory for cash. By graves, because graves have no guards, because the dead don't fight back, and because, most importantly, no one came looking. They erased identities, smoothed the past, then resold the stones as new. When the money hit his hands, Pablo didn't feel guilt. He felt power. That was the lesson. Morality wasn't fixed. It was flexible if the profit was right. And the thrill, it wasn't the money. It was realizing how easy it was to get away with it. Remember the moment from the intro. Here's the truth. As a boy, Pablo witnessed a murder tied to political violence, something common during La Violencia, Colombia's civil conflict. While other kids ran, Pablo stood frozen. He didn't scream, he didn't cry. His cousin later said, Pablo looked shocked, but not afraid. That moment rewired him. Violence wasn't unthinkable anymore. It was a tool. We explore the moments that created monsters, heroes, and everything in between. Subscribe if you want the truth behind the legends. Pablo once told a friend something that sounded almost innocent, almost childish. I don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer, I want to be rich. Respected, not educated, rich, and not someday now. He tried to follow the path his mother believed in: school, books. Classrooms filled with rules and waiting. But Pablo couldn't stand it. While teachers talked about the future, Pablo counted the present. Empty pockets, unpaid bills, hungry siblings. College felt like a promise written in invisible ink. Work hard now, maybe live later. Then one day he stood up and walked out. No dramatic goodbye, no regret. To Pablo, education wasn't useless. It was just too slow. Why wait 30 years to earn respect when the streets offered results by sunset? From that moment on, Pablo didn't chase diplomas. He studied money, fear, and opportunity, and the streets became his classroom. Car theft, fake lottery tickets, smuggling stolen electronics across neighborhoods, nothing glamorous, no headlines, no legends. But Pablo Escobar wasn't just committing crimes, he was studying people who panicked under pressure, who talked too much, who stayed quiet. Friends from his early life later said Pablo treated crime like a business, not a thrill. Every job had roles, every risk had a reward. And here what made him different, he always paid, not most of the time, not when it was convenient, always. If someone got caught, Pablo helped their family. If someone was short, he covered them. If someone betrayed him, they disappeared from his world forever. One childhood friend made you feel safe. When you worked with him, you felt protected. That feeling was addictive. Without realizing it, Pablo was building something far bigger than petty crime. He was building loyalty. In neighborhoods where the police were feared and the government felt distant, Pablo became something else. Reliable, predictable, present. Loyalty became his currency, trust became his weapon. And years later, when money alone wasn't enough, that loyalty would buy him protection, silence, and eventually an army. His mother begged him to stop. She believed in education, because books had lifted her out of poverty. She believed in rules, because rules were the only shield the poor had left. She believed in stability, because chaos always collects its debt. Pablo believed in results. To him, patience felt like surrender, obedience felt like weakness, and poverty felt like humiliation on repeat. Friends later recalled the argument lasted hours, voices rising, tears falling, silence breaking like glass. Hermelda warned him plainly, jail or death. No metaphors, no drama, just truth. Then he said it. Better a grave in Colombia than a life on your knees. That wasn't teenage rebellion, that was a worldview forming, where dignity mattered more than life, and power mattered more than peace. In that moment, a mother lost her son, and history gained a warning. By his early 20s, Pablo Escobar was no longer just surviving. He wasn't scrambling for coins or stealing to eat. He was rising, not loudly, not yet, but the streets could feel it. This was the phase of his life story where childhood ended, and ambition took over. Every lesson from his early life came with him. Never look weak, never forget disrespect, never rely on mercy. Each childhood mistake sharpened him. The humiliations at school taught him patience. The small crimes taught him logistics. The poverty taught him urgency. Friends from those years said Pablo walked differently now, spoke less, listened more. He wasn't chasing chaos, he was building control. And here's the dangerous part. Pablo began to believe he was smarter than the system, that rules were for people who lacked imagination, that risk was just another word for opportunity. The boy who once hated being small, who refused to lose, who refused to wait, was learning how to make the world move around him. This wasn't fame yet, this wasn't the empire, but the legend was forming, and soon Medellin would know his name. Every empire starts somewhere. Pablo Escobar, it started with poverty, pride, and a refusal to feel powerless. The same traits that helped him survive would later destroy thousands. His childhood didn't excuse his crimes, but it explains them. This is why childhood matters. The world doesn't create monsters overnight, it shapes them moment by moment. Pablo Escobar's early life, his unforgettable childhood moments, his sacrifices before fame remind us power without purpose becomes destruction, and the same hunger that builds legends can also bury them. If this childhood documentary, this untold history, made you see history differently, like the video, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more History Explained, legendary early life stories, and true stories before fame. Because history isn't just about the past, it's a warning for the future.